Showtime. Right in the middle of Round Pond, Maine. Frank Poland, Bethiah Steer Callahan, one of Round Pond's greatest ladies. Top shelf. Where did you grow up? And brothers and sisters.
I thought you were going to ask me when I was born.
Oh yeah, I forgot that part. Thanks for helping me out, because I need it. Yes. What year was you born?
I was born in July 1934, and I was born in Damascotta at the hospital.
Okay.
It was the Lincoln County Hospital, and it was on Elm Street, and now it's apartment buildings.
Okay. And where did you grow up? And brothers and sisters.
I grew up in Round Pond, and I had two brothers and a sister. And my parents were Bert Steer and Marion Thompson Steer.
What was your earliest memory?
Being with my father, I think. Being with my father.
School years and hobbies.
I told you it wouldn't take long to do my life. Frank, you talked me into this.
We're just getting started.
And I told you my life didn't amount to anything. But I will talk about Dad's store, so.
Good. That's a
Okay.
start.
Okay.
We'll work you in there.
Okay. Now, what do you want to know, my school life?
Yes, your school years.
I went to Washington School here in Round Pond, like every child in Round Pond. 8 years up there. It was a 2-room schoolhouse. Great memories with it. And then I went to Lincoln Academy and graduated from there.
Okay.
Aren't you going to ask me why I went to Lincoln?
Well, now that you're on to it, yes.
Okay.
Because you could have gone to Bristol.
I could have gone to Bristol. My mother wanted me to go to Lincoln. I don't know why. There were several young people that were going to Lincoln from Round Pond. So I went. I rode with Gordon Fawcett for 2 years, and my last 2 years at Lincoln, I drove.
Okay, here's
I
your.
drove an old 37 Nash. Mm-hmm. That was like driving a tank.
Your father's store.
Now that's what I agreed to talk about.
Yes, I knew you'd like that one.
Dad had a store. Dad was from away. He didn't grow up here. Dad grew up in England. He came to this country in 1904, and he arrived at Ellis Island. And he said one of his memories of Ellis Island, there was a flight of stairs, and you walked up that flight of stairs, and when you got to the top of it, they told you whether you could come into the United States or whether you went back where you came from. And he came into the United States, landed in New York City, said he looked around and he knew his parents lived in Portland on Monjoy Hill. That's all he knew where they lived. But he started doing jobs and worked his way to Portland. It took him quite a while to do it, several months from the way he talked, because this was 1904. And he got to Portland. He didn't have an address. He just knew they were on Monjoy Hill. So he found this Irish cop and said, "Can you help me find my folks? They live on Monjoy Hill." The cop started knocking on doors, and about midnight he knocked on the right door and found the Steer family, and that was quite a reunion. His father had passed away a couple of years before that, so Dad never did know his father. But so he lived in Portland till 1912. He worked at Armour's there. And in 1912, his brother Tom was living in Round Pond, and he owned a Fuller Meat Market. And Tom was sick, and he really wasn't a good businessman. And he was in trouble. He had a wife and he had a little girl. So my dad had a little bit of money, not much, and he came to Round Pond to go in business to bail his brother out, is what he did. And he went in business with him. That was in 1912. And he and Tom ran the meat market for 5 years. And Dad met my mother. She was a local girl. And they decided to get married. And Dad said there wasn't enough business for two families, so he would buy Tom out or Tom would buy him out. Well, Tom said, "You buy me out." So Dad did. And Tom went up on the top of the hill and bought J.E. Nichols' store. So, so Dad had Fuller's Meat Market, and he and Mom got married. And they lived in the old McGray house across the street, which was the Bryan house for years. And in the next year, this house came on the market. Russell Fuller was going to sell it. He had become old and sickly and was going to go live with his daughter. So Dad bought this house that we're in right now for $800. That's a pretty good price, huh?
Back in those days.
And continued with the meat market. And it was a small building. And I believe it was in 1920 that he decided he needed a bigger building. So at the shore, there were several boat shops and blacksmith shops. And I do not know which one Dad bought and moved up here. He moved it with oxen and horses. And the story goes that they got to the square up here the first day, and the men were sick. Well, Mother said they had the flu. Dad said they drank too much, so I don't know which one was true. But the store stayed at the square overnight, and Walter Richards told me he was in first or second grade at school, and he remembered walking home from school and walking underneath the store. It was on pilings up in the square. The next day, Dad had it moved down here, and the old meat market, he took half of it and attached it to the barn, and that's the garage he used for his truck when he got it. So Dad had the store. He had help. He always had somebody working for him, and Dad worked hard. Mother worked hard. After they got the bigger building, Dad could sell a lot more items. He sold um, everything that you needed in a grocery store. He sold paint, he sold gas, he sold kerosene, he sold paint, he sold nails, he sold fruit in season. Mother opened a dry goods store upstairs, and she sold material and dishes and coloring crayons and books and coffee mugs and yard goods and thread, and they did anything to make a penny, and they both worked hard. And pretty soon 2 more children came along, so they had 3 children. I hadn't appeared on the scene yet. And there was a big fire here. I think it was 23. And I've heard the folks tell that Dad came down from fighting the fire and told Mother, take what little bit of money we have and put the baby in the carriage and take what you can take in the carriage and start walking south. And Mother said when she left the house, she didn't know if she'd come back to it or not. But the wind shifted and everything was fine. But that was one story they always told. And Dad didn't become a citizen. About that time, he got his citizenship paper. And where do we go from here? You want me to continue?
Yeah,
Yes.
definitely, yeah, definitely, yeah.
You're on a good roll, Bethiah. Don't stop.
Please keep on going, because now I'm really fascinated by it.
And of course, the Depression came along, and all of these things the family I remember from the family talking about. And Dad killed his own beef. He had native beef, which he bought at the farms, and he killed and butchered because he was a butcher by trade before he came here. And he had men cut wood in the winter, and then Lenny Weeks would haul it out with his horses, and Dad would take the truck. He had a platform body truck at that time, and then he would bring it over here and split it and saw it and sell it for firewood. He built an ice house, and he cut ice every winter. One thing, this was in the 20s, my brother was with him, and they went to Waldoboro to get potatoes at one of the farms. And Dad was coming home, and of course the roads weren't good, and the truck probably wasn't very good. And they were going up German Meeting House Hill, and the gate on the tail of the truck let loose, and those potatoes rolled down German Meeting House Hill. And my mother said that my brother learned a few new words that he'd never heard before. And my father didn't swear, but he was upset. So I was born in 34, and the Depression was still going on. And Frank asked me my first memory. I've got to say it was being with my father. I was with Dad. I was with him when he went icing. I was with him when he delivered wood. I was with him. He took orders once a week. He would go in the morning and take orders at people that didn't have vehicles, and it wasn't easy to get to Damascotta then. And he would go in the morning and take the orders, and then come back to the store and put the orders up. In the afternoon, deliver them. There weren't too many kitchens in this little village that I didn't get into when I was a little kid. And I can tell you who made the best sugar cookies. They were great. And as I say, Dad worked hard. Mother, she had the dry goods store. She wasn't in it all the time, but if somebody wanted something, she went over. And we ate well because Dad had the store, but we also ate things that Dad couldn't sell. And rather than letting it spoil, my mother would can it. And that was through the 30s. And during the war, my brothers were both in the service. Things were different during the war. There were rationing stamps. My father hated them. I can hear him grumbling about them now. Because he had to have the stamps, the people had to have the stamps to buy the items. Dad had to have the stamps to get the items. It was for gas and for butter and for sugar, and Dad couldn't get the products. And the town of Bristol was dry the whole time Dad had the store. People, of course, needless to say, they got their liquor. They went to Damascotta and bought it. But Bristol was dry. And it was shortly after Dad sold the store that I think Bristol went with.
Bethiah, do you want to show some of the pictures of your dad in the store? And
That's up to Rusty.
We'll do that afterwards, I think, Frank.
okay,
I can always add them in.
yep, good.
Dad, of course, the day of a small country store was coming to an end. It really was. People, after the war, people had cars, people had more money. It was much easier to get to Damascotta. Through the years, Dad charged a lot of, let people have credit. And in 1959, my father was 77, and he decided it was time to sell the store. He sold it to George Martin, and he sold it for $10,000, fully stocked. Groceries were delivered the day before. A few weeks after the store was sold, Dad came to my house and said, "Come on up to the house, sis, I want you to help me." So he still had a wood furnace at that point, and we went down cellar, and there was a bushel basket sitting on the cellar floor. It was full of slips from the store that he had charged money, charged groceries. And he said, "We're going to burn these." I said, "Dad, this is a lot of money." He said, "Nope. He said, "Your mother and I are okay, and I don't want anybody going after these people for money." He said, "You help me put these in the wood stove, and you be a witness to it." And that's what we did. I have no idea how much money we burned up. None. But that was my dad. And he did things that we didn't know he did. He'd been gone a while, and one of the lobstermen in the village was talking to my husband. And he said, "Do you know, Bert helped me get my first boat?" And we had no idea. It was before the war. He was fishing out of a small skiff. And Dad said, "Wouldn't you like to have a bigger boat?" And he said, I told him, "Yeah, but I didn't have the money." Dad said, "I'll let you have it." I never knew it. I never had any idea. And it was probably 12 or 13 years after Dad passed. I was working at King Row Market then, and a gentleman came in the village and passed me some money. And I said, "I can't find where you owe anything." He said, "I don't owe this store." He said, "I owe your father." And I said, "Well, Dad's gone." He said, "No. He said, "He let me have money. My kids were hungry, and he let me have money. He let me have groceries and charged it." And he says, "I couldn't pay it back till now, but I can give it to you." And I said, "I don't want it." And he said, "No, you're going to take it." So I took it, and I called my sister, and I said, "What are we going to do with it?" She said, "Give it to the Cemetery Association." So that's what we did.
Wow.
And Dad, if you stop and think about it, Dad had the store through World War One, the Great Depression, World War II. He saw a lot of changes. A lot. And one thing I did forget that I would like to say, we had a phone on the porch of this house. And the porch door was never locked. The house was never locked. And this was back in the 30s. And not everybody had phones. And certainly the people on the island didn't have phones. And they knew if they needed a phone at night, they came in the porch and they used that phone to call a doctor or to call. And more than once, I have heard somebody talking and wondered what was going on, and it was somebody on the porch using the phone. And the store key hung beside that phone on a nail. And when they plowed snow, They would come, if they needed gas, they'd come in, get the store key, go turn the pumps on, pump the gas, hang the key back up, come the next day and tell Dad how much they got. Round Pond was a great place to live. It really was. And that was Dad's store. I don't know what I forgot about it, but I'm sure I have.
One of my favorite stories that you told me about you and your dad is when you went up to the Newcastle train station.
Oh. Well, Dad used to go. Summer people used. We've always had summer folks here, and they would come and spend the summer, and they would send their trunks on the train, and Dad would go up with a truck and he'd get the trunk. I don't know how he did it alone, but he did. And then he would bring them to their cottages and take the trunks in for them. And the same thing in the fall. And I remember, I don't know if Dad was supposed to, but a lot of people did. Before the train came, he'd put a penny on the track, and the train would run over it. And that was fun to have that. And of course, Dad kept cheese wheels down cellar, the old rat cheese. He kept grain in the barn. He just was a country storekeeper.
My father grew up across the street from you in that store. And my father always told me that your dad was one hell of a hard-working man. And from watching him and Ashley with the make and break engine, sawing wood out there as a kid, and the cribbage games.
Oh, yes.
I think the story was that your dad taught every kid in town how to play cribbage.
I think he taught quite a few. Quite a few. And I think I probably learned to play cribbage before I started school. I'm not sure, but and then he was working on the grandchildren too. Most of the grandchildren learned to play cribbage, so. So I've got real fond memories of both my mother and father. So is that it?
No. No way. We got a long ways to go.
I think that's it.
Nice try to skate your way out of it, but it ain't happening.
I think that's it.
Oh, you're gonna shut us down, are you? Let's see. Did you work in summer jobs?
Yeah, I worked down at Anchor Inn. I worked for Bob Foster when he started Anchor Inn. I worked for him in summer of 49 and 50. And that's when, they had donkey baseball games, and he had people coming from all over, and it was busy. It was busy. And then the Korean War started, and Bob was called back up. So the next summer of 51, I worked for George Dietz at his auctions at the Red House up here.
What's the best thing about growing up in Round Pond?
Everything.
Good answer.
Thank you.
Good answer.
Round Pond's been a pretty friendly village.
Best place in the world to live, as far as I'm concerned.
It has changed over the years, but everything has.
Yep. Let's see. Your high school, work, schoolwork.
Schoolwork?
Yep, your high school. You already said you graduated out of Lincoln,
Yeah,
right? Yeah,
no,
we covered that. I guess
you did too.
Yes, I did. As a matter of fact, just barely. He was glad to get rid of me. Let's see. Your husband, your kids, your family.
I got married the summer after I graduated from high school. Dick came here, he was drilling wells for Dyer Brothers in Waterville, and he came here to drill a well for my father, and I always said I never got rid of him. summer, and we had 3 children. And when I stayed home with the children till our daughter started high school, and then I went to work for Bill Russell at Kingrow.
Yep. Did you work down in Moxie Cove, down to the factory down in Moxie Cove? My mother did.
Yes, I did work down there in the shrimp plant, but that was just one winter.
One winter.
Yeah.
And when they went to the crabs, you didn't work there
No,
then.
no,
Yeah.
I just worked on shrimp.
Yeah.
I did. I think every woman in town did practically.
Yeah, I heard nothing but good things about the
Oh
place.
no, that was
Yeah.
great. That was great.
Active in your community.
I was just a typical housewife. Never did anything very exciting. My children went to Sunday school, and I taught Sunday school like most mothers did, and I was involved in Girl Scouts when Peggy was in Girl Scouts, and just nothing. That was.
Oh, you did a lot of help to the helping hands.
Well, I cooked for them.
Yeah.
Cooked for them, and
How about the Rebeccas? Did you do stuff for them?
I belonged to the Rebeccas. I didn't join them till it was in the early 80s, after the children had grown. With 3 children, I was busy, like most mothers. And I was treasurer at the White Church for quite a few years. My grandson likes to tell me they closed because I was treasurer. So my family is great to me.
I like the story that you told me about your grandson when Dick was on the roof.
Oh.
That's a good story. I like this.
I think Dick was 80, if I remember right, and he was on the roof doing something.
Was he working on the TV antenna?
I think he was working on TV, yeah.
Yep.
And Josh, our oldest grandson, said, "Gee, I hope when I'm 80 I can get up on the roof."
The scariest thing you ever faced?
Nothing.
You're fearless.
No, I'm stupid.
No, you ain't. You're way ahead of us where you're thinking. That's it. I'll move on to the next. Here's one for you. What's your secret of long, happy life?
Well, you can't pick your parents, but it would be nice if you could. That helps your childhood a lot. Pick a good husband, somebody you can like. And make the most of life.
Yep. Yes. Make every day count.
Mm-hmm.
Stay moving forward.
And don't let Frank talk you into doing something like this.
No comment. Something about you no one knows. I want to hear this one.
Wouldn't have a clue what it would be.
There's no secrets with you
No
then.
secrets.
Yeah. I won't push that one in. I think I better leave that one alone.
Okay.
What would you like to be remembered for?
Oh, just being friendly, and I hope I've never hurt anybody, so.
Don't worry about that one. If there was any advice you would give to the next generation, what would it be?
Well, to start with, they wouldn't listen to it. And I wouldn't try to give them advice. There's got to be somebody smarter than me.
I haven't met him yet.
Rusty, you're going to have to cut a lot out here.
Pretty good, I think.
If you was doing this interview, what questions would you ask?
I would say, why on earth are you doing this?
You're all history.
I like history. I like history.
Mm-hmm.
I always have.
Yeah.
And I am fortunate to have quite a lot of history about Round Pond.
Mm-hmm.
And quite a few pictures. And the only reason I do have is because we lived in my grandmother's home for a couple of years before we bought ours. And in her attic, there were 2 bushel baskets. Everybody saved things in bushel baskets of papers and photos. And when we moved out, Dick asked Gram, he said, can I have those bushel baskets of papers? And she said, I don't know what you're talking about. She said, I haven't been to the attic for years. And he told her, and she said, of course, take them. So they were saved. They would have been destroyed otherwise.
What gives you hope?
Oh, Frank, you're asking me questions I can't answer.
That should be an easy one for you. Because every time I think of you, and I've known you since I can remember anybody, you either got a big smile on your face or you're always laughing about something.
My grandmother told me when I was a little girl, it was just as easy to smile as it was to scowl. And it is. So smile.
I think I'll hang on to that one.